Before we proceed, a word of caution. This content demands discretion from its audience. Presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes, what follows is a dramatized reconstruction based on federal courtroom proceedings and public testimony. Step into this narrative with eyes wide open, for the truth unfolds in the stark light of justice. What if Jamie Foxx didn't collapse, but was taken down? What if his silence was never healing, but survival? This isn't a comeback, it's a confession. And in a federal courtroom with Diddy watching stone-faced, Jamie's not here to perform. He's here to expose the machine that tried to erase him, one truth at a time. The courtroom pulses with a nervous hum, sunlight slicing through tall windows like a guillotine. Reporters clutch notepads, spectators lean forward, their whispers fading as Jamie Foxx strides in. His black suit is razor sharp, but his face, etched with lines of a man who stared down death, tells a deeper story. No one expected this. No one's braced for the bomb he's about to drop. For months, the world chewed on rumors. A medical emergency cloaked in mystery, cryptic Instagram posts hinting at betrayal, whispers that someone wanted Jamie erased. Now, under oath, he stands before the jury, hands trembling but voice steady as a blade. This wasn't just a health scare, he says, each word landing like a gavel. This was a warning, and I survived it. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs, once a friend, a titan, a keeper of Hollywood's darkest secrets, is about to be torn apart. Jamie isn't here to testify, he's here to detonate. And the fuse is lit by what he saw in the shadows of Diddy's infamous parties. The air crackles. The storm is here. Picture cruising through LA's neon-lit arteries. The city's pulse throbbing in your ears. In the rearview mirror, a black SUV looms. No plates, no identity. Tailing you from Hollywood to Miami. Jamie clocked it first. Same black SUV, different cities, he tells the jury, voice low, like he's pulling the memory from a locked vault. Then the text started, pinging from ghost numbers. Don't forget who made you. You've seen too much. He smirked, thinking it was a prank, until his assistant opened an email that named his daughter's school, her class schedule laid bare. His stomach dropped. That's when I knew this was serious, he says, eyes scanning the courtroom like he's still watching for that SUV. On set, the threats got physical. A stranger cornered him, eyes glinting with malice, demanding $35,000. We got footage from a party, the guy sneered. It could ruin you. Jamie didn't blink, called the cops, watched the guy slink away. But the message burned into his skull. Stay quiet or pay the price. He gathered his team, voice like a last will. If anything happens to me, don't call it an accident. Make sure the truth lives. That morning, Jamie woke in his sun-drenched bedroom, but his body wasn't his. His chest burned like it was caving in, his neck stiffened like concrete, his left arm hung limp. He tried to scream, but his mouth choked on silence. I was staring at people begging for help, he tells the jury, and no words came out. The hospital was a sterile maze. Beeping monitors, needles, doctors muttering, stroke, seizure, neurological event. But Jamie knew better. It wasn't natural, he says, voice cutting through the room. Cops showed up, not for pleasantries, but on a tip. Someone close to him whispered poison to a doctor. Tests came back inconclusive, but Jamie's body screamed the truth. You don't need proof when your bones know you were attacked. Then the disappearances started. His phone left on the hospital tray, gone. His journal, where he scribbled fears each night, missing. The security footage from his home the night before? Wiped clean, his team said, voices trembling. Jamie grips the stand, eyes blazing. I felt like I died, and maybe that was the plan. Imagine a party where champagne flows like rivers, but the air feels like a vice. That was Diddy's world. Jamie stepped into it years ago, shaking hands with moguls, laughing under chandeliers. But the invites evolved. No phones, they'd say, sliding an NDA across the table. Sign this, not just for what you see, but who you see with. The vibe turned sinister. Velvet curtains cloaked back rooms where power vanished into whispers. Politicians, athletes, actors, Jamie says, doing things they'd burn millions to bury. He stayed on the edges, shaking his head. It felt wrong, like a deal with the devil. Saying no was a crime. In 2022, after dodging a party, a text from Diddy's circle lit up his phone. You acting brand new. You forgetting who helped you. The pressure tightened. Mutual friends hissed, "Stop joking about the parties on air." Then he saw a male artist, a household name, stumble out of a party, face ashen, hands shaking. He saw something in a back room, Jamie says, and it broke him. I knew I could be next. Early 2022, a last-minute invite lured Jamie to a Beverly Hills mansion. Iron gates creaked open, soft jazz drifted through the air, but the vibe was a Crip dressed in Versace. Security snatched phones, their eyes cold as steel. It felt like a funeral, Jamie says. But everyone was still breathing. Candlelight danced over familiar faces, rappers, execs, and shadowy power players with no names. A hallway stretched toward the gold room, whispered as the spot for real networking. Jamie paused, peering through a curtain slit. A boy, maybe 17, stood trapped in a circle of suited men, his eyes hollow, like a lamb among wolves. Stay, Jamie. You're one of us now. A voice purred, a hand clamping his shoulder. He spun, locked eyes with the man. No, I'm not. He stormed out, heart slamming against his ribs. But from that night, his phone burned with threats. Shut up, or you'll end up like the others. The game had changed. This wasn't Hollywood. This was something evil. Jamie fought back in the shadows. He archived every text, installed cameras at home and on set, had his security tail those SUVs. But his enemies were ghosts, always a step ahead. The morning after his collapse, his home security system was a blank slate. Not a glitch, not an error, gone, he says, holding up a photo of a hard drive, its casing melted, warped like it had kissed a blowtorch. On set, sabotage crept in. Cables were sliced, light sensors taped over, wires tripped him in the dark. Footage from the night of the $35,000 shakedown? Corrupted. Producers shrugged, avoiding his stare. Then a crew member, face pale, slipped him a screenshot, an email labeled Foxfire Protocol. Bullet points seared into his mind. Clear recordings. Control narrative. Prevent leaks. Jamie faces the jury, voice like iron. Everywhere I go, cameras die. Evidence vanishes. You tell me that's a coincidence. The courtroom shifts, the weight of his words sinking in. Kim Porter haunts Jamie's story like a specter. At a quiet event, she pulled him into a corner, her eyes sharp. No trace of her usual warmth. Be careful who you trust, Jamie, she whispered. They're watching us. She spoke of talking to a journalist, maybe the feds. I saw too much and I'm tired of being quiet. Months later, she was gone, officially from pneumonia. Jamie's voice cracks. She was healthy. She was scared. That's no coincidence. He mentions her journal, packed with names, dates, secrets, now vanished. It wasn't lost, it was taken. He lists others. Heavy D, Andre Harrell, Al B. Sure, who posted that Kim was murdered, then scrubbed it like someone twisted his arm. They all knew too much, Jamie says, pausing as the names hang heavy. And they're gone. The jury leans in, the gallery still as stone. In the hospital, a deal slithered through a third party. Millions, an NDA, a gilded cage labeled Secure Your Future. Jamie held the contract, its words a leash on his soul, and tore it to shreds. Fear stalked him. Strange cars idled outside his gate, their tinted windows like voids. A friend digging for evidence was mugged, the timing too neat. A colleague pleaded, "They'll blackball you. You'll never work again." Jamie's reply was ice. Then I'll do something else. I'm not dying with this truth in me. Cassie Ventura lit the spark. Watching her tremble but hold firm on the stand, Jamie saw his own fear reflected, and his duty. Kim Porter, who died shielding her kids, sealed it. "She didn't get her chance," he says, voice steady. "I'm still here, so I have to." Even now, he feels the eyes, the cars, the threat. "If I die," he says, "I die talking." Jamie locks eyes with Diddy, who sits stone-faced, a king on a crumbling throne. "I was your friend," Jamie says, not shouting, just cold as a blade. "I defended you. I laughed at the jokes, but you tried to erase me." He points at Diddy, turning to the jury. This man isn't just a mogul. He's a cog in something darker. A system that trades souls for secrets. Then he swings at Hollywood. The award shows that crowned Diddy. The magazines that dubbed him a visionary. The execs who knew but pocketed the cash. They didn't just protect him, he says. They built him. "You built an empire on NDAs, fear, and manipulation," he tells Diddy, eyes burning. "But empires crack, and they fall fast." The words land like a fist, the courtroom holding its breath. Jamie steps down from the stand, his footsteps echoing in the hush. No applause, no gasps. Just a stillness that screams the world has shifted. He doesn't glance at Diddy. He doesn't need to. The truth, once locked in the shadows of parties and threats, now burns under the light of justice. "I owe it to myself," he said, and the world heard. The empire of silence, built on fear, money, and buried secrets, is cracking. Jamie Foxx, the man they tried to erase, stands unbroken, a flame no one can snuff out. But Jamie's story, his collapse, his warning, his refusal to die silent, was never just about him. It was a crack in the foundation, one that let the rot show through. And if you follow that crack deep enough, it doesn't lead to headlines. It leads here. To a room bathed in candlelight, a girl trembling over a contract and a predator waiting behind polished charm. Picture this. A penthouse draped in shadows, its only light the soft flicker of candle flames dancing across cold marble and dark-paneled walls. The low thump of a hip-hop beat hums in the background, not loud, but constant, like a pulse that refuses to die. At the center of it all, a young woman, just 19, barely out of girlhood, sits at a sleek mahogany table. Her fingers tremble as they hover above the dotted line. Across from her, Sean Diddy Combs leans forward, calm, composed, his voice smooth like silk stretched over steel. "Sign this," he says, sliding the non-disclosure agreement toward her, the paper pristine, legal, cold. "And your dreams? They'll come true." But the contract is no doorway to destiny. It's a collar, a muzzle, a calculated pact of silence wrapped in the illusion of opportunity. She hesitates, not because she doesn't want it, but because some part of her still hears the warning bells buried beneath the beat. Diddy's eyes stay locked on hers, unblinking. "This is how the game works," he says, and in that moment the line between aspiration and entrapment disappears. She signs. That NDA didn't exist in a vacuum. It wasn't an isolated act of manipulation. It was a page from a playbook used time and again, perfected over years. What she lived was just one instance in a pattern, replicated across decades, spanning hotel suites, studios, backstage rooms, and penthouses just like this one. The real horror isn't just what happened to her, it's that it happened so many times the system no longer needed force. It ran on momentum. And Sean Combs wasn't a passive participant. He was the architect. With Bad Boy Records, he didn't just cultivate stars. He constructed a pipeline, a machine, one that scouted the desperate, seduced the eager, and devoured the compliant. His empire thrived on shadows. NDA after NDA, party after party, the whispers, the favors, the hands that signed for silence. From the infamous freak-offs to the web of enablers paid to protect him, it wasn't just power he held. It was immunity, purchased and reinforced by a culture trained to look away. Then came the footage, grainy, time-stamped, 2016, a hotel hallway. Diddy striking Cassie Ventura, the woman who once stood by his side. It wasn't just an act of violence, it was a rupture. When that video surfaced in May 2024, the damage wasn't just reputational. It tore a hole in the veil, and behind it, more victims, more voices, more stories buried under contracts and careers. This story isn't about scandal, it's about structure. It's about how one man learned to twist power into protection, and how an industry let him do it. The courtroom may now sit in silence, but that penthouse moment still echoes. Proof of a design meant to seduce, isolate, and silence. To understand Diddy's empire, you have to rewind to Harlem, early 1990s. The streets buzzed with ambition, and a young Sean Combs was already more than a music executive. He was a strategist. As he built Bad Boy Records, he wasn't just chasing talent, he was curating control. The targets were always the same: black and brown youth, mostly boys, sometimes girls, often aged 14 to 25. Kids from fractured homes, surviving rough blocks, with dreams bigger than their options. Like John Doe, 16, Brooklyn, 1995. He rapped at a showcase, his verses raw and hungry. Diddy pulled him aside after the applause died. "You're the next Biggie," he told him, eyes gleaming. "But first, you gotta show me you're loyal." John thought he meant the studio, the booth, the grind. He was wrong. Loyalty in Diddy's world meant silence. It meant obedience. It meant giving yourself over piece by piece until you couldn't tell where the ambition ended and the exploitation began. Diddy's playbook was meticulous, a predator's strategy cloaked in mentorship. He positioned himself as a savior, offering golden opportunities to those least equipped to question them. Programs like Flavor Camp, billed as artist boot camps, were less about training and more about selection. A former Bad Boy employee speaking anonymously to investigators in 2024 revealed that candidates weren't chosen for their talent alone, but for their malleability. The ideal prey? Someone desperate, isolated, with no one to turn to. "Find the ones who are hungry," Diddy allegedly wrote in a 2010 email to his team, uncovered during the federal probe. "They'll do anything to get out." The process was insidious. Victims were invited to Diddy's homes, studios, or exclusive parties, each step drawing them deeper into his orbit. A female dancer, identified only as Sarah in court documents, recalled her first encounter with Diddy at 18. "I thought I was being groomed to perform," she testified in 2025, her voice steady but heavy. "But I was being taught to stay quiet." Flavor Camp wasn't a launch pad. It was a training ground for compliance. Diddy's team, assistants, scouts, even club promoters, combed through cities, schools, and early social media platforms like MySpace to identify targets. They'd approach kids at open mics, talent shows, or late-night parties, dangling the promise of stardom. Once hooked, the victims were reeled in, their dreams weaponized against them. What made Diddy's approach so effective was its veneer of legitimacy. He wasn't a stranger in a dark alley. He was a cultural icon, a man who turned his own rags to riches story into a brand. To a teenager from the projects, his promises felt like salvation. But every invitation to a party, every late-night studio session, was a step toward a trap. The auditions were real, the contracts were signed, but the cost of entry was something no one explained until it was too late. "This is how the game works," Diddy would say, and for those young enough to believe him, the game was already over. Once the trap was set, Sean "Diddy" Combs didn't need to use force, at least not at first. His weapon was subtler, more insidious. The atmosphere he created, a carefully curated blend of allure, fear, and inevitability. Picture a Miami penthouse, its walls lined with mirrors reflecting every angle of the room, the air thick with the scent of liquor and sweat. Diddy sits in a leather armchair, his presence commanding, his eyes locking onto a young woman handed a glass of champagne. "Drink," he says, not as an order, but as an expectation. She hesitates, but his gaze doesn't falter. "This is how the game works," he adds, the phrase a mantra that echoes through every corner of his empire. Cassie Ventura, his former girlfriend, described it in her 2023 testimony. He didn't force me to drink, but his eyes told me I had to. That moment, that glass, was the first step in a psychological unraveling, a process designed to erase boundaries until victims no longer recognized right from wrong. Diddy's manipulation was a masterclass in control, a three-step descent into submission. Step 1. The drink, often laced with GHB or ketamine, blurring consciousness just enough to dull resistance. Step 2. The introduction of sexual acts, framed as part of the party's culture. The infamous freak-off parties were no spontaneous bacchanals. They were scripted performances, complete with strangers invited to participate, cameras rolling to capture every moment, and Diddy orchestrating from the center. A female victim, identified as Jane Roe in court filings, recounted her first freak-off in 2024. They handed me a red dress, checked my weight, 128 pounds, good enough, and led me into a room with mirrors everywhere. I felt like I was playing a role, and if I didn't perform, I'd be cut. Step 3. Normalization. Over time, victims stopped questioning. They observed, adapted, and accepted the depravity as the cost of staying in Diddy's world. The September 2024 indictment revealed chilling evidence. Over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and vials of sedatives found in Diddy's Holmby Hills mansion. Tools of a machine built to break wills. Jane Roe's voice cracked as she testified, "They gave me a drink. When I woke up, I was on a screen doing things I didn't remember." Diddy said, "Keep this quiet or everyone sees." The mirrors in that penthouse weren't just decor. They were a metaphor for Diddy's control, reflecting his victims back to themselves, distorted and powerless. The freak-offs were theaters of compliance, where every act was choreographed to make deviants feel routine. A former party planner speaking to investigators described the precision. There were rules, weight limits, dress codes, no tattoos. If you looked tired, they'd drip you with drugs to keep going. Victims became actors in a play they didn't write, their shame recorded as leverage. The process was so gradual, so deliberate, that many didn't realize they'd been stripped of agency until it was too late. By the time they saw themselves on those screens, the game had already claimed them. But Diddy's control didn't end when the party did. The penthouse doors may have opened, but an invisible cage snapped shut around his victims. Non-disclosure agreements, often signed by teenagers as young as 14, were the first bars of that cage, carrying penalties of $1 million per violation. A 2024 court exhibit displayed one such NDA, its fine print a labyrinth of threats disguised as legalese. Beyond the contracts, Diddy built a surveillance network that rivaled a small intelligence agency. Drivers, bodyguards, assistants, and even lawyers formed a web, tracking victims' every move. A former bodyguard testifying anonymously admitted, "I was told to log every call they made, every address they visited. If they stepped out of line, I reported it." The system was airtight, designed to detect any hint of rebellion. When federal agents raided Diddy's properties in March 2024, they uncovered over 100 laptops and phones, a digital vault holding terabytes of freak-off footage, meticulously cataloged like trophies. The cage wasn't just technological, it was social. Diddy's parties were star-studded affairs, attended by A-list rappers, actors, and moguls, their presence lending an air of normalcy to the depravity. A victim recalled a chilling moment. "I saw a famous rapper watch as I was pulled into a room. He turned away like it was his cue." The silence of those celebrities was as crucial as the NDAs, a collective agreement to look the other way. Not because they didn't see, but because they knew when to avert their eyes. "It wasn't that no one saw," a witness later told prosecutors. "It's that everyone knew when to look away." That complicity, that unspoken code, turned Diddy's world into a prison without walls, where victims were watched, judged, and silenced by an entire ecosystem built to protect its king. The cameras stopped rolling, but the threat never did. For those who dared to speak, Sean "Diddy" Combs had a playbook to silence them, a ruthless machine that crushed dissent with precision. When Cassie Ventura filed her lawsuit in November 2023, accusing Diddy of years of abuse, the backlash was swift. Anonymous calls flooded her phone, their messages chilling. "You'll never work again." Tabloids, fueled by Diddy's PR team, branded her a gold digger, their headlines screaming betrayal. A female singer, known for a single hit in 2009, faced a darker fate. After hinting at Diddy's secrets in a radio interview, her career vanished overnight. No gigs, no contracts, no trace. Whispers in the industry pointed to a car accident in 2017 that claimed a cameraman who'd allegedly kept copies of freak-off footage. The police called it a tragedy. Insiders called it convenient. Diddy's reach extended beyond threats and disappearances. He wielded media like a weapon, with outlets like Page Six publishing glowing profiles, such as a 2019 piece hailing him as a philanthropic titan, days after a victim filed an anonymous complaint. Churches, too, played their part, with pastors praising Diddy's donations while ignoring the screams behind his generosity. An email uncovered in the 2024 federal probe laid it bare. Diddy's PR team instructed an associate to handle a victim with a $50,000 payout, adding, "Make it quick." This wasn't about protecting an image. This was about rebuilding a god from the ashes of his sins. "I got a call at 3 a.m. A former Bad Boy intern testified in 2025, her voice trembling. "They said if I talked, my family would pay." Diddy's empire didn't just silence voices. It erased them, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and unanswered questions. But Diddy didn't operate in a vacuum. His power was propped up by the gatekeepers of pop culture, figures whose influence shielded him from scrutiny. Names like Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, and T.D. Jakes didn't stain their hands with blood, but their clout cast a long shadow. When allegations surfaced, Diddy's team leaned on firms like Sunshine Sachs to orchestrate charity galas, where Perry and Oprah appeared alongside him, their presence a silent endorsement. A leaked 2020 email revealed the strategy: get Tyler and O at the event. It'll drown out the noise. The noise was a lawsuit from a 22-year-old dancer buried under headlines about Diddy's generosity. T.D. Jakes, whose megachurch received millions from Diddy, preached sermons on forgiveness while sidestepping the accusations. Comedian Monique, in a 2024 interview, didn't mince words. They don't apologize. They buy silence. Her words painted a picture of a machine that operated like a cathedral, producing silence instead of salvation. Social media wasn't spared. X post from November 2024 exposed an influencer paid $10,000 to post a video defending Diddy, calling him a victim of cancel culture. These gatekeepers didn't just protect Diddy, they laundered his reputation, turning a predator into a pillar of the community. "I saw Oprah at one of his parties," a former assistant testified. "She smiled, shook hands, and left before the real show began." Their power wasn't in what they did, but in what they chose not to see. Their silence as deafening as the music in Diddy's penthouses. Diddy's story isn't the heart of the problem. It's a symptom of a deeper rot. The real scandal lies in a culture that thrives on deliberate amnesia, where power is built on the bones of the silenced. Why did it take decades for the truth to surface? Who profited from the quiet? The 2016 video of Diddy assaulting Cassie Ventura, once a fleeting rumor, now plays on a courtroom screen. Its grainy frames exposing a man who thought himself untouchable. But the light doesn't just shine on him, it illuminates an industry that watched, nodded, and turned away. Cassie, Jane Roe, and countless others broke the rules of the game, their courage cracking open a vault of secrets. Yet the question lingers: who's next? What boy or girl, eyes bright with dreams, will step into a room lit by candles, a camera whirring in the dark? "I signed the NDA at 17, Cassie said in her 2025 testimony, her voice steady. "But I'm not signing my silence anymore." Her words are a call to arms, a challenge to an audience that's been complicit too long. This isn't just Diddy's trial. It's a reckoning for everyone who looked away. Will you keep watching the screen, or will you demand the light stays on? The game only works if we let it. The gavel may fall, but the story is far from over. The shadows cast by Diddy's empire still linger, and more voices wait to break free. Join us as we unravel the next chapters, tales of courage, betrayal, and truth that will shake the foundations of power. Stay vigilant, stay tuned, for the revelations are just beginning. Until then, thank you for standing with us in this pursuit of justice. Farewell, and see you in the light of what comes next.